Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut here with Brian Galke,
Hello.
and we're ACES 53. We're actually more than ACES 53, but today we're ACES 53, which is attitude, commitment, enthusiasm, and smile, the most important thing that you bring to the table. And then the 53 relates to the 53rd card in the deck, which is the first Joker, and that is a unique ability that you have.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
You did.
Actually, I watched one of my videos the other day. I was like reading. Okay, well, I was like, it was last Friday. I was tired after the golf tournament I had to do,
Right.
for Rotary, and I was exhausted. And I phoned it in the morning with Mike Kelly.
What's funny is whenever it's like on the line that I need to remember it now. I can never remember what ACES stands for. I'm like attitude. So I'm glad you always kick it off.
Well, it's attitude, commitment, enthusiasm, smile. It's really easy.
I know, but for some reason,
say it 10 times and you'll know it. And we'll talk about repetition shortly here, how that's important. Yeah. Again, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Bandage on your face.
Yep. Skin cancer. Had to go get it cut out and get it stitched back up. So use sunscreen. So luckily it was
wear
one
a hat.
in one.
Wear a hat.
Wear a hat. Wear sunscreen. Do it all.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You bald people who don't wear hats are ridiculous. I can't believe you guys are out walking around without hats on.
Steve asked if I got bit by another bee or I got stung by another bee.
I was going to say you're trying to look less like your father and do the picture of the dude from the Goonies.
Yeah.
So.
Didn't swell up quite as bad. Now I may have a black eye later. We'll see. But yeah.
We'll see. Well, if you get one, then we'll just know. And if you get two, then we know you didn't listen the first time.
That's right.
Or the second time.
Yes. So what are we here to talk about today?
So we kind of changing up a little bit. We decided to go back to some of the people that brought us information over time in the industries, the different authors and sales gurus. And we decided to work with Brian read the book of Tom Hopkins, How to Master the Art of Selling. And I actually listened to his Gentle Art of Persuasion because I'm really important about persuasion. Mm-hmm. We've all, everybody thinks persuasion's manipulation when it's not. Persuasion is getting people to do what they wanted to do in the first place. You're just helping them get there. And we've talked about that before, but I think it's important to go over. So I think over the next few weeks, we're going to pick an author, guru, read their stuff, talk about it, and go forward and see what we like. I want to see if what they said back because this book I have is from the 80s, right? And the other book, the Persuasion book, is probably in the same period of time. What are you laughing at for?
Because we were trying to discuss yesterday, was I listening to it on a cassette tape or a CD when I was driving to work?
Definitely. If it was 80s, it was a cassette. All right.
I didn't get my license till I was 91 or in 91. So no, mine would have been
probably a CD at that time. I think my first CD I got was in 83.
Yeah.
So that, Madonna, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I remember my first VHS was Michael Jackson's Thriller. That was the first music video I got.
VHS?
Yeah, VHS. We'd go to the mall and it was a big deal. It'd just come out with Thriller. So yeah.
Thriller.
But
we just listened to MTV.
Yeah. Wait, they used to play music?
Yeah. That's what they did back in the day. All right. So you want to go kind of first? Did you, the reason I want to bring it up is because a lot of the new gurus or the people who think they are saying how bad the old stuff is. And I've said, no, the old is the way it is. You can just adjust it a little bit to today, right? Change some certain words and not say the exact same thing. And I won't get into some of your thunder because there's one thing I want to talk about that I saw on your thing. And I think you can still use it, just word it differently.
Are you talking about my banners, the things that I love so dearly?
Yeah. So why don't you start with Tom Hopkins, what you have for him, and then we'll get into, everything about him that we like or don't like.
So there's his website, Tom Hopkins. The crazy thing is when I looked it up, I was surprised to hear that he's been doing this since 1976. He was one of the ones, that was at the time Zig was still really popular. You had
Jim, like 50 some years, right? Almost 50 some years.
Yeah. And he's still apparently alive in, it says in Arizona, and he still does talks and everything. So for anybody who's never heard of him, there's a few different ways to cheat. Obviously, I went to YouTube and I watched some of his stuff this morning. But if you have Apple Music, you can just go type in his name. He's got several that you can get for free while you're listening in there, so you don't have to buy the albums. if you want to experience kind of and dig in
Invest in yourself.
I agree.
Yeah.
He also has a Lightspeed system. So when you go to his website, he's got a Lightspeed VT, Brad's company, all that. So I didn't realize the smart thing that I found out about him was he also found a way to create continuing education credits for all different industries. So then it was a no-brainer to bring him in as a speaker or to buy his class because it was mandatory for so many different industries. So
we did that back in the 2005 for the financial planning industry. We created a course in the mortgage side so that it could be taught and they could learn all the different things, and then you could do the same thing.
Yeah, smart. In addition to that, was he have 19 different books? I think it was something like 8 million copies of his books have been sold over time, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. And then what are all the books on?
Well, go back to you go back up. You didn't say what they were. You have the Master Art of Selling, which is the one I know, right?
Yep.
Selling for Dummies, which is one you know. When buyers say no.
Yeah.
Look at when buyers say no, they just don't know. KNOW. Anyway.
I was surprised, like I said, when we went to Amazon, 18 different books that were out there, 19 books, and apparently working on another one. So,
well, yeah. You know, it's everybody's rewriting other people. Nice to see he's just redoing himself.
Exactly.
Right.
You're right. A lot of people are going in now and taking if you know what public domain is after a book is X many years old, I think it's 100 years old, then it can go into what's called the public domain, which means anybody can use it. And there's something called the Gutenberg Project. And that is why Moby Dick and all these other books can be free. But people, if you ever seen their bundles, they'll offer things like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich as part of their bundle for their package. That's because it's now a free resource. And so people go and take it and say, oh, it's part of my package. And people think, oh, I'm getting something. Anybody can get Think and Grow Rich because of that fact. So
you're talking about the copyright's only good for so long.
Exactly. And then it becomes just free to the public. Anybody can use it, modify it, change it. Kind of crazy.
So I have 100 years is what you're telling me.
Yep. 99, didn't you? Well, no, I guess you came out this year.
I got 99 and a half.
But, you know, ironically, when I was looking him up, what is he teaching? It's kind of a lot of what we've been talking about before, prospecting, you know, your communication, how do you build relationships? But what he's really, truly known for is like how he does the wording when people are talking to everyone. And we may get into that today. We may get into that later on, but that's his whole thing is when people went, I watched some of his live stuff on YouTube, and he would give people PDFs or printouts then of what they were going to be saying. And as part of when he was going through the training, they had to read the sentences out loud. And I know I'm kind of dipping into what
they have a workbook.
Yeah. Yes, a workbook. There you go.
Yeah, that's what us old people call it.
Yeah.
Hold on, before you keep going, go back to up one. All right, so you know he talks about relationships, right, and how effective that is to build those and keep them going. The one I was on a podcast earlier today, and the lady was from San Antonio, and she's a CPA, and she asked me, do you stay in contact with your past clients? And I'm like, of course, that's how I get additional people, you know, besides them, if they're going to buy up or buy down, or they refer so many more people. You need to have what we call the CRM, which we had before, the client relationship management software, whatever you want to call it, or whatever. I don't care if you're brand new in the business, get an Excel spreadsheet and just put the people's name in there and do something with it. You don't need a CRM if you have less than, you know, a few hundred clients. You can take care of that yourself, but eventually get there. Right. And so I was like, of course, because that's how I keep my business going. I said, for the first 18 years in the industry, I didn't, because I was by the phone and we never really, you know, hit them again. Right. I didn't think I'd ever come back to them, but I should have kept that database. Could you imagine how many thousands and thousands of names I would have?
Well, that's what you always hear the phrase, the fortune is in the follow-up. And it's not just people who didn't buy from you. It's following up with people who did buy from you as well.
Well, most important thing is people who bought from me.
Yes. Care. True.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones. The others are dead to me.
That's right. You're dead. No, it depends on the situation over time. Yes, you put them in a little drip file and see what happens, you know.
What are the other areas he talks about? We kind of talked about before: prospect, which is lead generation, building relationships, communication, but he does a lot of mindset and motivation stuff as well. What's interesting is to watch him. Did you ever see Jim Rohn like before? Have you ever seen any videos of him speaking live?
No.
Oh,
you're slowing
did we
down.
lose that again?
Not me. We lost.
All right, I get to have my own show.
We're losing you. We're losing you.
Oh, is it me, Brian, or is it you? Oh, I was
no,
hoping it was you. I just said it was going to be my show again.
Well, it could be.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's
going.
interesting because he does so much on wording. So anyway, but yeah, he kind of doesn't move around the stage as much as Zig did, but he definitely doesn't stand still like Jim Rohn. So it was interesting to watch him on YouTube earlier today.
So what you're saying is some people jump around and some people don't jump.
Right. Some people stay in one area. He was in between. Zig is all over the stage, and Jim Rohn never left his podium. So Tom kind of fell in the middle of those two people.
Right. And you have another banner here that I was going to make fun of because you have Feel Felt Found, which is, right, one of those things I know how you feel. I felt the same way. And this is what I found out. Mm-hmm. But the problem is people have heard it so much. People know you're doing it to them. And so I actually threw that into Chat GPT a while back and it reworded it for me.
Well, there's the phrase, a tactic known as a tactic blown. And the minute somebody catches you doing anything like that, or mirroring and matching, you cross your arms, so I'm going to look at you and then cross my arms. People are wise to a lot of that now. There is so much training that everybody goes through. It used to be that sales training was only for salespeople, and then everybody realized everyone is in sales. Mm-hmm. And so they encourage, companies will buy their employees books on body language, on sales techniques, you name it. So then it's easier to do it. It's kind of like if you've ever learned a magic trick, then you go and you watch a new novice magician, like, oh, I know what they're going to do. Oh, I know what they're going to do. And it kind of takes some of the fun out of it. That's the same thing with sales. If you start using a lot of things that everyone knows and that to a degree are gimmicky, then it's not going to go very well for you.
Right. I mean, the most important thing about this concept is empathizing with them and acknowledging their concerns.
Yes.
And answering and actually addressing their objections through this process by going, I understand. So your objection is this. I mean, that was one of the things I listened to with the book I listened to with the Gentle Art of Persuasion. I was like, wow, I totally forgot this stuff. I totally forgot this. I used to know, I did all this so much. And so what I'm getting at is you need to listen to this stuff constantly. You should be listening to a one a day, a couple hours a day. Mm-hmm. Or at least an hour a day.
One that worked for me, not I understand how you feel, but when we'd have customers that would call and they were upset, it was like, let me make sure I understand I'm capturing the data right. And that let people know you're at least listening to them. And then when they were venting, they felt heard, right? But if you just say, oh, I understand, well, how do I know you understand? Have you been through this? Have you done it? So I agree with you on this one. Some of his other ones are really good, but when you start off with I understand, that's almost a non-starter for a lot of people. Oh, do you really understand?
I know how you feel. Do you really know how I feel? You lost somebody at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly where it is. So not the best one to start off with.
But I mean, it's again about, you were talking about a magic trick, right? Mm-hmm. And in the, did you have mind if I jump into mine real quick? Cause since we were talking about magic.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. So in the Audible, or it'd be in the book, I assume too, he talked about how, he got you do a card trick, and then you give the cards and you have someone pick a card and they say, okay, it's 9 of diamonds, right? Well, then the other person who you're going to do the trick to doesn't know this, and you persuade them to get them to the 9 of diamonds. And how they did it is they first said, okay, there's, let's just say there's 52 cards in a deck. I agree with that. All right. So then there's red and black. What do you pick? And they say red. And you say, oh, it's actually, you're trying to get a red one, right? So you say, that is correct, and then you say, okay, now there is so many suits in the deck, is it diamonds or clubs? And you say clubs. And it says, that's right. So that leaves diamonds, and that you follow me. And so you follow through with where you want to lead them in this conversation is how you answer that, the way they answer. Mm-hmm. And because when I listened to it, I was like, holy cow, that's pretty good. And then he breaks down how he did it. And I'm like, oh, it was so quick and so nonchalantly, because he had done it so many times, repetition, which is like doing it 10 times. and everything, doing this multiple times, reading it multiple times. So it's your words, knowing this stuff. And that's what we talked about scripts before. You write a script, but you need to make it your own, period. So you don't have to think what you're talking about.
Right.
And so it goes through the whole thing, and then it gets to a part, and he goes, all right. And he goes, what was your card? 9 of diamonds. Oh, guess what? I was right. You know what I mean? And it got so it was just amazing how you can get somebody through. And he called it control, which I hate the word control, because that just, it says you take control over the conversation to lead them down a certain path. I always said I'd led people down a certain path in my conversation to get them to where I wanted to go. I don't like control.
No, control has a negative connotation unless somebody's like, hey, don't worry about this, I'm in control. And that's usually like the pilot of the airplane. But everybody else, you're like, oh, you're in control, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like my wife she hates, she reads a lot of books. And so she went to one of the thrift stores or whatever and bought some for a quarter. And she goes, I bought you a book. It's quotes and quibs for writers and authors or whatever. And I look at the book, I opened it up and I was like, what the heck? It was, again, in the 80s, right? So it's like Airplane of the 80s. There's certain things you can say and can't say. And I was reading this, it's like, this is perfect for me next year in Rotary, or this year in Rotary, because this will be exactly how I am. I'll just grab one of these things out and I'll say it and it'll offend people. And that's exactly what I want to do. So,
well, it's good to have goals.
Well, it just, because I was saying a couple of them, one of them was like, it's never a good time to offend a woman when she's happy or sad, when she's sad or when she's happy. Right. And, just stupid shit like that. It's like, wow, totally true. Yeah.
Wow.
I was throwing a few out at my wife. It's like, if there was one about people not being good looking and all that stuff. There was a bunch of those. It's, it offends people these days. So.
Well, so the couch was comfortable to sleep on last night?
Actually, it was. Matter of fact. She gave me the book. I'm just like, Marcia, you know what year this book is from?
Yeah.
Because some of these are going to offend people. And I read a few. She starts laughing. But what are you going to do? So where was that? Repetition, knowing how to get somebody down the path you want to take them to. And that's important in sales, to persuade them the way they want to get somewhere anyway. They want to buy a house. They want to buy a car. They want this. They want that. You need to help them get there. They need help making that decision, because people buy emotionally and then justify it logically.
Right. Everybody buys off emotion first. And then, like you said, they try and justify it with logic after the fact.
Is that what we do?
Yes. All the time.
All the time. Having empathy allows you to connect with other people at a deeper level. That's all right. So there's traits of this is a little weird. Okay. I'm going to say it and then we'll go over it. All right. Traits of highly persuasive individuals. Not me, as you can tell, I can't speak today. But first, let's go back. Learning persuasive strategies. Impact is crucial. Repetition is the key to learning. Practice makes perfect, right? You can click on there for me. Understanding how to utilize these strategies effectively is important. Internalizing the technique.
Go back to number 2. Repetition, right, is the key. That's not a one-time done deal. And that's why so many different companies will do role playing, right? But people get into that, I read it once and I've said it once and I'm good. No, repetition is literally doing your reps, getting your reps in over and over and over again. So I just think,
what does ACES stand for, Ryan?
Attitude.
ACES. What does ACES stand for?
Oh, I know. So attitude. I always forget these whenever I'm on the spot.
See,
I don't know why.
Repetition. Here we go. Repetition. Get it done. ACES stand for attitude, commitment, enthusiasm, smile.
I knew smile.
Well, what we're saying is, again, it's important to do the repetition, understand what you're trying to sell, what you're trying to go over. So it's like second nature, it's like, oh, look at I didn't know I had that thing on my hand, right? You've had your hand forever. Anyway, move on. Click to 4. I already read. So just go through these real quick since I already did them. All right. So the internalization, the technique, right?
All right. So that's what we talked about, making the script your own instead of just reading it off.
Right. And reinforcing strategies through consistent practice. Again, all this is about practice, making sure that you do what you do and practice it and get it to so people understand. Because there's nothing worse than when we had the other day, when you had the Up movie and the guy, I'm a
Yeah. I am a wilderness. Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing worse than that. All right, so what I have now is they say there's certain traits for people of highly persuasive individuals, right? For people who do this.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline is a must have trait. So you have to be disciplined, right?
Right.
Believe in yourself is vital for success. So you have to believe in yourself, right? So these two things right now, discipline, knowing what you're doing, believing in yourself. Can you see my fingers? Right. Oh, sorry. Yep. There's like 10 of them. Having empathy allows you to connect with other people on a deeper level. Right. I guess so. It's not sympathy, it's empathy.
It's empathy. And that's one that people get so focused on commission breath, they stop focusing on the other person. And that's why they usually lose a deal.
Being self-assured helps you exude confidence in your persuasive effort. Sorry, just messed around.
You're a good speaker.
I'm a good reader, I tell you. You need to have a burning desire to succeed. I think a lot of people don't have that. And so these are just, in order to do well in sales and be persuasive, these are normal things. If you have fears, confront your fears head on, whatever those are. Most people have a fear of speaking, right? They have a fear of doing what we do, fear of being on radio. I do everything that makes me uncomfortable. Well, almost everything. Within reason.
At least you know your limits. Yeah.
Yeah. At least, yeah, some things. You have to have a genuine care about others. Period. Because there are some people who say, I can sell ice to Eskimos, but why would you? I mean, so that you don't care about them. You got to have a thick skin in this, right? I had a friend of mine who used to, at bars, he'd hang out by the bathroom because he's like, they all have to come through here at one time.
Right.
I'll meet everybody this way. And willingness to invest in self-education. And one thing that Tom Hopkins went over is he tells people, and I think a lot of people, to invest in yourself monthly, whether that, a certain percentage of your income, 5% of your income, 10% of your income, whatever works for you on an annual basis, invest that every month on you. So if that's $5,000, that'd be $6,000 a year, but that'd be, $500 a month is $6,000 a year. So, right.
And when you were going over some of them earlier, like understanding the product, and the video I was watching earlier today, he also talked about you really truly have to believe in the product. And having been where I worked somewhere that I truly believed in the product, and then some products I didn't, I can wholeheartedly agree with that. If you don't have faith on it, it's hard to sell it to somebody else. And who was it? Zig used to say, be a product of the product. Same thing. Like if it's possible that could you buy it? Number one. I'll just write out some family members now. I've got some family members who sell fire pits, but they don't have their own fire pit in their backyard. I'm like, what are you doing?
What?
You need no. Well, they already had one that came with the house. I'm like, yeah, but you should have your own while you're back there, so you can take pictures of it, post it on social media. Anyway,
take it camping or to the lake or whatever, right?
Yeah. So it's one of those if you're
going
to
fake picture it.
Yeah.
Just go somewhere and make and have it on fire and take a picture of it and put it out and go.
Exactly.
So at least you're showing you're using it. Yeah. It's kind of like NASCAR drive, not necessarily NASCAR, but race car drivers. They used to, back in the day, or people who were on commercials actually had to utilize the product they were selling. Now they don't. Or I guess they do, but that's why they drink the beer instead of just like, I'm a Coors fan.
Right. Well, if you work in certain liquor industries or for beer companies, whatever, if you're caught in public drinking a product that's not theirs, it's actually in your contract that you can be terminated for it. So they would have to go and they'd have to have special permission. Well, what if, I work for Miller and they don't have a Miller product? Okay. What am I allowed to be seen in public as an employee of the company drinking? That's how strict it's gotten with a lot of places.
Well, it should be. I mean, why, if you don't like, what you sell, don't sell it.
Right. And that's an extreme example, but it's one of those of, if you sell a certain type of car and you don't drive it, why? Now, unless you're buying a Lamborghini or something where that's the reason for it, it's just one of those, if you wouldn't be a product of the product, why would you sell that product is what it really comes down to. And then the other thing that you brought up is he was talking about when he was a realtor back in the day, a lot of people would get in their cars and they wouldn't go knock doors like they were supposed to get new business. Instead, they just pull over somewhere and park because that way they wouldn't get a rejection. And so you mentioned like having the tough skin and having discipline. That's what hurts a lot of salespeople. And I've been guilty of it where it's easier to send an email or a text message than it is to make a phone call because you can't get really rejected. I know, but
everybody hates me because I always call them.
Yeah.
Even friends, just because it's easier. I want to hear from you. I want to make sure everything's okay. Because how you doing? I'm all right.
I'm okay. It said text messages, a great way to be misunderstood by others and to misunderstand what other people say to you.
That's perfect.
That's a pretty funny meme. Yeah.
So through this, persuasion, he goes into the depths of how to, what he calls control with questions. Right. We talk about this all the time. Ask questions, take it down the path, know what questions you need to have in your presentation to take them down the path you want to get them to. When you ask questions, you take control of the conversation. Right. I remember one of the agents, he got mad at me because one of our clients was taking us down a different path than I wanted to go. And I brought the conversation back. He goes, you didn't let him finish and this and that. It's like, but you don't understand. We're trying to get to where he wants to be at. We're here to help him. So one of us is brainy. I don't know who it is. It's probably you. I'm going to say you.
Test my internet right now.
And don't.
Yeah, right now it doesn't work.
It'll get worse. All right. You uncover the person's interests and preferences when you ask questions. You obtain the minor agreements or disagreements during the process to build momentum. By tapping into emotions, you can guide and influence the discussion, and identify objections or obstacles allows you to address them effortlessly, right? Or effectively, whatever works for you on that conversation. But for me, if you don't have an objection, then you aren't on the sales process, right? You need, unless you've answered it already, there should be objections. And that's just because not everybody's going to go, okay, well, bye. Right. So sometimes when I call people, I know what I want and they're like, I go, you had me at hello.
Right.
Let's finalize this. All right. I already researched it. I know what I want. Let's go.
So that's what Bradley calls an order taker instead of a salesperson, because you expect to have objections and, usually get a no. And even in the Tom Hopkins stuff, he was saying in one of the audios was there's an inherent human nature that they have to object before someone will even buy. Like they feel like if they go with it, that they were a pushover, or they made a bad deal. And so human nature is to want to at least give you an objection a majority of the time. Now, like you said, there are different instances, especially with low inventory the last few years. Like the whole reason we created this was with low inventory, very little things available in the marketplace. It was to a point where people could be order takers for a very long period of time, for 2 to 3 years. Now it's getting back into between layoffs and now inventory is back, other than in some things. Right now you have to go back to being a salesperson instead of an order taker.
Right. I mean, and there's a lot more to unpack that we just don't have the time today. But one of the things I want to talk about. So this morning I woke up, my truck had a low back tire, 12 pounds of pressure less. Hello. Right. And so I came in, did the first podcast I had and then dropped it off. And I was like, so, the guy that I've known him for a while. Right. And I was like, how's business? He's like, He goes, tires are up 40%. He goes, that's a lot of money, up 40%. Yeah. And I was talking to somebody else and they were saying how in the housing part, a lot of the stuff, they had like a 12-year increase in price in 1 year. Right. Which is unheard of. Usually they'll go up a little bit at a time. And that's one of the issues right now, I think, is just why it's even harder to sell, because you have to tell people, help them get to the process and why is your product better than others or whatever you're selling. With me, I'm selling intangible, right? It's all about, not everybody has the lowest rates and the fastest service. That's not about it. It's about, making sure you don't make a mistake.
Right. Something else screw up the process later on.
Or the biggest thing is most, like we talked about, most people hate making mistakes. So they'd rather do nothing than make a mistake.
Oh, so I used to work with governments, and there was a joke about government employees. You'll never get fired for not making a decision. You only get fired for making one. And that's how a lot of government agencies work. So it is what it is. But Like you mentioned, today's just, we want to give you guys an example of who is Tom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back on Thursday and we're going to go into more of, what are some of the things that he teaches a little more in depth, give some examples of it. And the reason for that jumping between today and Thursday is we wanted if y'all want to go check out his stuff, look up his name, go to his website. Like I said, you can look him up on YouTube. I went to Apple Music, just typed in his name. There's plenty of things that you can listen to on there. Get a taste for it, and then come back and feel free to, put questions in the chat, learn a little bit more about him. And we're going to give more of examples of the strategies. Now I can't talk.
Gave it to you.
Exactly.
And for me, I've known about him for, as long as I've been in sales, because he was one of the stuff. I think this might be one of my original books. So it's so yellow, along with the other one, Think and Grow Rich, I have back there.
Right.
When I first got in sales back in my early 20s, I went and got books, because that was what you do. And one of the podcasts I was on, someone asked me, what is your favorite book? And I started pulling off the shelf. Yeah. Oh, it's Think and Grow Rich. It's this one. It's this one. It's this one. I'm not saying the other ones because they have not paid me to produce them. I'm just endorse them. Just kidding.
Well, it's hard to have a favorite book because there's so much. So the other day I was driving Greg to the airport, and he's like,
dropper.
I didn't drop the last name. And he's like, what do you listen to in the car? I'm like, podcasts. I don't listen to music unless my daughter wants to hear something. So
so these were two of my favorite. These Think and Grow Rich, Zig Ziglar, Closing the Sell, and then Tom Hopkins were the one. And there's a couple other ones, but those were the ones I really said because I learned from old school, and then you can make it now. You can change words to make it work for today. A lot of stuff will still work. I mean, it's still working, I should say, because we're all pretty much the same,
Well, automation is great. Like, look at how you can create a lead magnet now. You can get information. You don't have to cold call people. You can do marketing. People reach out to you. There's a lot of things that automation have done, but it's taking communication a few steps back. And that's what we want to help do here, is help people remember what made sales possible and or successful in the beginning that we've gotten away from over time.
Yeah, because it's still about us, period. Automation is just going to help you get there faster. But I mean, it's one of his things in here was talking about, reflexive questions. And if I have a porcupine and I'll throw it to you, you'll catch it. I'm thinking, no, I won't. I'll fucking turn and let that son of a bitch run away. So maybe a hot potato or a ball or something, but a porcupine.
Baby, exactly. He was right on the baby part. The porcupine part, not so much, but yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We were taught when I was I was trying to think, what was it? Sticky questions is what we were taught when I was a technical recruiter. Oh, you got to have sticky questions, right? It is what it is. So
stinky question?
Sticky, not stinky. Yeah.
I was messing with you.
I know. All right. Well, Ed, thanks for joining us today. Everyone else, don't forget to add Facebook to StreamYard so you can comment, make questions, things of that nature. And then we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Central. See, when I go tell it my time, or 10 o'clock for Ed, because he's in West Coast Pacific time.
Right. The West Coast.
That's right. You just get to sleep in longer. But anyway, appreciate everybody being here. See you guys on Thursday.
And if you want to support us, the easiest way to support us, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Thank you.
Right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.